So if you can keep fighting fucking 50-something-year-olds
You don't think Tyson has a chance?
and making a living at it, I think that Mike Tyson has a puncher's chance against anybody. Mike's 58 years old. You know what I mean? And
Right.
I hate doing this because Mike gets mad at me every time I do this, but Mike shouldn't be fighting.
White criticized the Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul fight, questioning why he should hold back over such a ridiculous matchup. He pointed out that Tyson, at 58, has been out of the ring for over a decade, while Paul is 28 and in his prime.
Believe that he was making the money he says he's making, Showtime Boxing wouldn't have gone out of business, and Showtime would have made sure they kept paying him.
Right.
But he's doing it. You know, what do I think of the Mike Tyson fight?
Yes.
Tyson's 58 years old. You know what I mean? Jake fought a guy who was his age and was also considered a boxer, and he lost.
UFC boss Dana White didn't hold back in criticizing Jake Paul, highlighting that this matchup is just another of Paul's signature moves. White pointed out Paul's history of handpicking older retired athletes, making it seem like a legitimate fight, when in reality, it's nothing more than a circus act. White didn't just slam the fighters, he called out the entire gimmick, a cash grab disguised as a real fight. He labeled the so-called legendary fight as nothing but smoke and mirrors, and he's calling it out for exactly what it is.
Under any circumstances, a fucking almost 60-year-old man shouldn't be fighting a 27-year-old guy under any circumstances, even if it's Mike Tyson. So it's just this.
Dana White expressed disbelief over the matchup between a 58-year-old legend and a 28-year-old YouTuber turned boxer who cherry picks opponents for easy wins. His frustration was so intense, it almost felt like it was coming through the screen.
God, when this fight happens, Tyson will be 58 years.
I'm worried about it.
Under any circumstances.
Forget the fighting legend status for a moment. Mike Tyson is nearly 60, with decades of wear and tear on his body. Dana White slammed Jake Paul's approach to advancing his career, saying it shouldn't involve dragging aging icons out of retirement just to score a few Instagram-worthy punches. White really turned up the heat when he called out Paul's opponent's strategy. He pointed out what many have been thinking, but were hesitant to say. Jake Paul doesn't fight tough competition. Instead, he targets retired athletes and aging fighters well past their prime, making it a one-sided spectacle.
And he was getting this like rep, like, oh, they're protecting their golden goose, whatever. And I remember, it's so funny. I remember the Jan fight. I was like, oh, they're done with him. They're gonna feed him to Jan. They don't think he's got it.
Dana called out Jake Paul's opponent choices as blatant clout chasing, highlighting that his list, including Tyron Woodley, Anderson Silva, and now Tyson, reads like a retirement home roster. It's clear Paul isn't focused on proving himself as a legitimate boxer.
If you are the world champion, there's no questioning who the best is, because you've already run through, the baddest people in the world in your weight class.
And now I understand why you get annoyed by media, because I remember when Sean was Sugar Sean was coming up, and he was getting that there was this narrative that like he was being protected.
Dana didn't stop there, throwing in a jab about Jake Paul's loss to Tommy Fury and bringing up the Showtime boxing situation, further exposing Paul's questionable career choices.
Tyson knocks out
My biggest problem with the Jake Paul thing is, and how this plays out, is when he actually fought somebody who was a boxer, who had the same type of record he has, who was his age,
Tommy,
and who was his size, lost.
Yeah.
Dana pointed out that when Jake Paul faces someone of his own age and skill level, like Tommy Fury, he loses. He emphasized how Jake's whole act falls apart when the playing field is level.
These guys, Jake needs Tyson and needs all these other people, because everybody's going to tune in to hope that Mike Tyson knocks him out.
Right.
They're not tuning in because they think Jake Paul's a great fighter and they want to.
Dana's perspective cuts through the fluff, getting straight to the heart of the issue. This fight wasn't about honoring the sport or delivering a legitimate contest. It was a cash grab, pure and simple. Tyson's name brought the legacy, Jake brought the social media hype, and together they turned the ring into a spectacle that barely resembled boxing. Dana wasn't about to let it slide without calling out every mismatch, money-grabbing, credibility-shredding aspect of it. Honestly, after hearing his take, it's hard not to agree. He made the whole thing look exactly as it was.
I have love for Jake too. I don't know.
I
don't know when a fight's happening. I really
all
don't.
the same. He fights older people that are smaller. It's all the same shit. And listen, the kid's doing his thing, but he lies about all this stuff.
The night of the fight between Jake Paul and Mike Tyson left everyone with mixed feelings. The judges scored it 80-72, 79-73, and 79-73 in Paul's favor. But don't let those scores fool you into thinking it was a close battle. Paul pretty much dominated. He landed a staggering 171 punches, while Tyson only managed to land 87. That's a huge gap, and when you break down those numbers, it's clear who controlled the pace of the fight. Despite the scores, Paul's performance was a clear display of superiority in the ring.
Mike gets forward, lands a beautiful jab that rocks Jake, and I think immediately that made Jake realize that he couldn't be reckless against him. But then as time went on, he realized that that threat was not as present as he might have thought.
The issue wasn't just that Tyson was outboxed by a younger, faster opponent. It's that at nearly 60 years old, Tyson was fighting someone who not only had a significant age advantage, but had also spent years cherry-picking easy opponents. Tyson's punches landed fewer times, his stamina struggled, and his body just wasn't built for a fight of this nature. Despite all these clear disadvantages, Tyson hung in there. That's really the only credit you can give him. He can quit, but here's the fallout, and it's not pretty. Many are now questioning whether Tyson's legacy has been tarnished by this fight, and honestly, it's a valid concern. Tyson is one of the most iconic figures in boxing history, and his career should have ended on his own terms, not in a bizarre, money-driven spectacle. For those of us who grew up watching him dominate in the ring, seeing Tyson in that condition was hard to stomach. It felt like an unnecessary and painful moment for his legacy.
If I brought up fucking Jake Paul,
Yeah.
pretty much everybody in the room and the other room wants to see Jake Paul get knocked out. So you're hoping, you got the reason why you hope Tyson would pull this off, or
Did you help set that up? Because I know you're close with Tyson.
God.
Many boxing fans want to remember the prime Tyson, the one who knocked out opponents with ferocious power, not the version struggling against a younger man. It's hard to accept, especially for longtime fans who view this fight as a mere cash grab. Honestly, it feels like a slap in the face to the sport's rich history and legacy.
Rules are 8 2-minute rounds, not 3-minute rounds, 2-minute rounds, and 14-ounce gloves, not 10-ounce gloves. Normally, pro fights are 10-ounce gloves, and no headgear, which is normal for, a pro fight. Here's my question: how do you call it a professional fight if the rules you're using are not professional rules?
The reactions from the audience were mixed, with some entertained and others outraged, but nearly everyone had an opinion. On one hand, there were viewers drawn in by the drama, those who tuned in simply to see Jake Paul in action, treating the fight as little more than entertainment. On the other hand, you had the fans who felt disgusted by what they witnessed. These were the boxing purists who had no interest in drama or spectacle. They came for a real fight, not what they saw unfold. For them, Tyson's involvement was a tragic fall from grace, a far cry from the powerhouse he once was. Jake Paul, in their eyes, was nothing more than an opportunistic celebrity looking to inflate his ego and bank account at the expense of a legendary fighter. Was it worth risking Tyson's health for the sake of a paycheck? Absolutely not. This fight wasn't about skill, legacy, or sportsmanship. It was a spectacle, and a shameful one at that.
These guys. Jake needs Tyson and needs all these other people, because everybody's going to tune in to hope that Mike Tyson knocks him out.
Right.
They're not tuning in because they think Jake Paul's a great fighter and they want to.
Tyson's legacy deserves far more respect than being used as a pawn in a circus act. Let's be honest, Jake Paul didn't need to fight a legend to make a name for himself. He could have faced someone his own age, still active in the sport, and earned respect the right way.
I'm surprised that Jake Paul is doing this. He's on the way to building a legitimate boxing career, regardless of what anyone else thinks. He's having real fights. To now step down to do this kind of exhibition style fight against 50-something-year-old man. I just don't get the motivation from Jake's perspective.
Jake Paul took the easy route by targeting Tyson, a man clearly past his prime in dealing with health issues. This wasn't a brave challenge, it was exploitation. Tyson's name carries immense weight in the sport, and Paul knew that using him in this fight would generate the kind of buzz and attention he couldn't attract from fighting a legitimate competitor. It wasn't about skill or competition. It was about capitalizing on Tyson's legacy for personal gain. For Paul, it was another opportunity to make headlines without taking on the risks that come with facing a real boxer in his prime. This brings us to Dana White, who has been publicly feuding with Jake Paul for years. White has repeatedly called Paul a novelty act, and honestly, it's difficult to argue with him. From the very beginning, Paul's rise in the boxing world has been based more on spectacle and self-promotion than on actual athletic ability or a desire to compete at the highest level. White has criticized Paul for taking advantage of the media circus surrounding his fights, rather than earning respect through genuine skill and dedication to the sport. Paul's decision to fight a faded icon like Tyson, rather than an active, skilled fighter, only reinforces White's point. It shows that Paul's focus isn't on proving himself as a boxer, but rather on playing to the crowd and securing a payday. In the eyes of many, this kind of approach diminishes the integrity of boxing. Tyson and the sport itself deserve far better than to be dragged into this kind of spectacle.
From Jake's perspective.
Well, I do. Jake, I mean, part of it is what it's been from the beginning. You know, he's been obviously very upfront about it. He's in the money-making business. That's, you
And
know,
I don't think he needs the money. How much money do you need? He said makes like tens of millions a year.
Is there ever enough money, really? I mean, you've been in the finance.
For me, there is.
You are in the financial business before you got into this.
There's a level where you don't need any more, and it's not very much.
No, I agree. There are things more important than just, just money.
Jake Paul's entire career has relied on picking easy fights, and the Tyson match was just the latest example. Jake Paul isn't out there fighting the best, he's cherry-picking opponents he knows he can beat. When he faces real challenges, he struggles. Dana White is right to call him out for this. If Paul truly wants to be taken seriously as a boxer, he needs to step up and fight someone who actually poses a threat. The aftermath of Tyson versus Paul raises serious concerns about the future of boxing. Will more legends be drawn into the influencer boxing circus? Already, fighters and promoters are questioning the integrity of the sport. Streaming platforms like Netflix are fueling the spectacle rather than preserving boxing's rich tradition. For boxing to regain its credibility, it must return to its roots, focusing on genuine competition rather than gimmicks. If the sport doesn't course correct soon, it risks losing its respect and authenticity, prioritizing quick profits and viral moments over the legacies of its fighters and the sport itself.